Two teen sisters, Maya and Ariana, were supposed to study in the library, but one of them went to a party instead. When they came back home, their parents could immediately tell who hadn't been to the library. Can you? It was Maya. Look, there's glitter in her hair. Mr. Harris is a landlord. In his building, it's prohibited to have any pets, but he keeps hearing some barking on the third floor. There are 3 apartments there, so he decides to pay a visit to everyone who lives on that floor. Mr. Walker, Ms. Clark, and Mr. Allen. Can you tell who keeps a dog? It's Mr. Allen. Take a look at the shoe rack. Some of his shoes are chewed. 4 friends were going to another city by car, but at some point, something distracted the driver, and they got in a car crash. A police officer arrived and started the investigation. He asked who had been driving, but no one took the blame. Then, the officer inspected the car. Can you tell who the driver was? The driver was the red-haired girl. There's a sweater on the driver's seat. She's the only one not wearing a jacket or sweater, so it must be hers. Mrs. Miller was waiting for a delivery, but she never got it. And since the woman had to go to work, she asked her husband to drive to the post office and ask about her package. When Mrs. Miller came back home, Mr. Miller said he'd just returned from the post office, but they said the package hadn't arrived yet. Mrs. Miller didn't believe him and claimed he hadn't driven anywhere. How did she understand it? Take a look at the car. It's all covered in snow. To go to the post office, Mr. Miller would have to clean it first. In a parallel universe, you're only allowed to have fun and eat candy. No one ever reads or studies. Mrs. Relham came back home after a long and entertaining day at the club. Her 3 daughters were supposed to have a lot of fun on their own. She asked them what they had been doing. Hannah said she'd been watching TV all day long. Ellie answered she'd spent the day at a water park. Ava told her mom she and her friends had a candy-eating contest. Still, Mrs. Relham could tell one of her daughters was lying. That daughter spent all day studying. Who was it? It was Hannah. Take a closer look at her hands. There are some ink stains. If she had actually watched TV, she wouldn't have needed a pen. In June, students of the Faculty of Economics had their econometrics exam. It was the hardest one in that semester, and everyone was worried. On the day of the exam, the students entered the classroom. Everyone was assigned to a specific seat. A professor was sure one of the students was going to cheat, so he made that person sit right in front of him. Which student was it, and how did the professor know? It's the guy with dark hair. It's June, and all the students are lightly dressed. Still, this student is wearing a sweater with long sleeves. He must be up to something. Now take a look at these 3 students, Savannah, Melody, and Scarlett. One of them managed to cheat at the exam, and no one noticed it. Can you tell who it was and how she managed to use her notes? It was Scarlett. She's wearing long boots. That's where she kept her notes. Michelle was having a house party. She noticed that her brother had disappeared and went upstairs to find him. When she neared his room, she heard laughter. Her brother was in there with some girl. But Michelle couldn't figure out who it was. She got very curious, so after they left, she sneaked into his room to look for some hints. She suspected 3 girls, Lily, Sydney, and Nicole. Michelle immediately guessed who her brother was dating. Who was it? Her brother is dating Nicole. There's an earring on the couch, and Nicole is wearing only one earring, which looks exactly the same. She must have lost it. Can you tell which student in the classroom isn't a real person? The guy in the middle doesn't cast a shadow. There's definitely something fishy about him. Michael had a crush on Ellie, the girl he studied with. One day, he decided to write her a note, asking her out. Unfortunately, he didn't remember which desk was Ellie's. Can you tell which one Michael needs? Take a look at Ellie's photo. She's waving her left hand, which means she's likely left-handed. There's only one desk where the pen is to the left of the copybook. It must be Ellie's desk. A grocery store manager found out that someone had been stealing bananas from the store all the time. The man conducted his own investigation and got 3 suspects. But he couldn't accuse the customers until he was 100% sure. Take a look at these people and say who the banana thief is. Look at the guy wearing a top hat. It's a perfect place for hiding and stealing stuff. He must be the thief. Brandon and Genevieve are on their working trip to London. They decided to meet in a cafe in the evening. Now, they're both driving there. Can you tell which of them isn't smart? Brandon. In England, people drive on the left side of the road, and he's driving on the right. Early in the morning, a big sum of money went missing from the accountant's safe in the office. Only 3 people were at work at that time. Haley, the accountant, said she'd left for a couple of minutes to go to the bathroom. Eric, the software manager, claimed he'd had his lunch break and hadn't seen anything. Joseph, the cleaning man, said he'd been cleaning the 2nd floor at the time. Can you figure out who's lying? It's Eric. He couldn't have a lunch break. It was still early in the morning. Someone had been stealing food from a grocery store. The manager couldn't find out who it was and hired a detective. Look at the security camera footage for the last year and say who the thief is. It's the dark-haired pregnant lady. It's been a year and she's still pregnant. Plus, the size of her belly has never changed. It must be fake. Theo was spending the day with her boyfriend Derek. After lunch, he said he had some urgent business to deal with and left her for a couple of hours. When Derek came back, Theo realized he'd been cheating on her and broke up with him. How did she find out? Take a closer look at Derek's neck. There's a lipstick stain. It's red, while Theo is wearing pink lipstick, which means it's not hers. Mr. Roberts, one of the best surgeons in the country, came to his insurance company. The man said he'd been robbed right in the street. The assistant asked if Mr. Roberts remembered any specific details about the criminal. He said he didn't. Everything happened too fast, and he had very bad eyesight. The assistant refused to start the investigation. He said Mr. Roberts was lying. He wasn't actually robbed. Why didn't the man believe Mr. Roberts? Mr. Roberts is a surgeon, but it's not possible to work as one if you have poor eyesight. It means Mr. Roberts lied. In a small town, someone stole all the chicken nuggets from a local store. The owner called the police, and they started the investigation. There were 3 suspects who were in the store at around that time. Mrs. Wilson said her family was vegetarian. She wouldn't be interested in chicken nuggets. Mr. Martin said he'd needed to return home very fast. He had to take a conference call. He didn't have any time to waste. Mr. Thomas simply stated that he hadn't stolen anything. Can you tell who the thief is? The thief is Mrs. Wilson. She said her family was vegetarian, but behind her back, there's a freshly cooked chicken on the table. Esme was having a walk in the forest. After it started to get dark, the girl tried to find her way back home, but got lost. Finally, she came across a witch's house and asked the woman to help her find her way home. The witch only agreed to do so on one condition. She gave Esme a piece of string and said,
"Put it anywhere. If I can step over it, I'll keep you with me forever. If I don't manage to do it, I'll show you the way home."
What can Esme do? Esme should put the string right next to the wall. This way, the witch won't be able to step over it. Take a close look at the picture and figure out who the thief is. Look at this guy. His right hand is inside the woman's bag.
Guess the weight. Jake was buying veggies for his lunch recipe. He purchased a bag of carrots when a shady man approached him and told him, "Sir, I don't have any money with me, but I really need those carrots. Let's make a deal. If I write your carrots' exact weight on this paper, you'll have to give them to me. If I don't, I'll give you my watch." Jake agreed, thinking there was too small a chance for the stranger to guess the number correctly. The mysterious guy scribbled something on the paper and gave it to Jake. As soon as Jake read it, he handed him the bag of carrots. What did the man write on the paper? Your carrot's exact weight, just like he said he would. Will he win the game? Mark was visiting a new game store in his neighborhood. That day, staff members were giving away free games if the customers answered their questions correctly. Mark got in the queue and waited anxiously to see if he'd get the board game he wanted. When his turn arrived, the staff member said, "What has 6 faces but doesn't wear makeup, has 21 eyes but can't see?" Mark was relieved when he heard the riddle, and as soon as he answered, he got the game. What was his reply? A dice. The indivisible apples. Sam went apple picking with his sister, and on the way back, they met their 4 cousins. There were only 5 apples in the basket, and Sam had to divide them equally between his sister and their cousins. But one apple had to remain in the basket that he'd take home. How would he divide the apples? He'd give 4 apples to his 4 cousins, leaving 1 apple in the basket for his sister, and walk home with her. The new retail store. John's friend Susie opened a new retail store, and she came up with a new method to price her stock. A tie cost $15, a belt $20, a beret $25, and a blazer $30. Using this method, how much would a handbag cost? $35. She's charging $5 for each letter you need to spell a clothing item. The apple tree. Simon won the title for being the smartest person in his town. One day, he woke up in an evil scientist's basement. Oh, who would have thought? Who wanted to prove that Simon was cheating at each test. So he broadcasted the event live on social media to prove his point. He said, "All right, Simon, I'll ask you a simple math question. A farmer in California has an apple tree in his backyard and supplies the fruit from the tree to a local grocery store. On Sunday, the store owner called the farmer to see how much fruit he'll deliver on Monday. The farmer knows that the main trunk has 26 branches. Each branch has exactly 15 boughs, each bough 8 twigs, and each twig 1 fruit. How many oranges will the farmer deliver?" Simon immediately gave the correct reply. Can you? "None," said Simon. "Apple trees don't bear oranges." Well. When partying goes wrong. Mason, Jacob, Susie, and Edward were having a party at Edward's place. The next day, Edward was found unconscious, and none of the three friends knew what happened to him. When the police showed up, they found a note next to Edward's calendar. It read 3, 4, 9, 10, 11. Immediately, the detective knew who did it. What about you? It was Mason. The note was next to a calendar. Take the first letters, transform them into months, and you get Mason. 3 equals March, 4 equals April, 9 equals September, 10 equals October, 11 equals… which one is that? Where's Mary? Sarah and Jamie were spending the weekend at Mary's house. On Saturday, they went to bed late, and when they woke up the next day, Mary was gone. She left a note on her nightstand that read, "Come find me here, noon-DL." What does the note point to? A city, a famous mountain, a forest, or an island? A city. If you unscramble the letters, it reads London. The right door. Mike was driving for 7 hours on the freeway when his tire blew up. He called for help, and they said it will cost him $200 to fix it. He was angry because he was thirsty, hungry, and didn't have any money. In front of him, still sitting in the car, 3 doors appeared, each with signs above showing where they lead. The first is full of food: burgers, spaghetti, lobsters, and pizza. The second is topped with beverages, from energy drinks to sodas and iced teas. The third door has $1 million in cash. Which door should Mike open first? His car door. Who took the car? Mr. Ronald returned home from his 3-week vacation only to find his car missing. He left 3 of his employees at work to take care of the house, but none of them were there when he returned. To catch them off guard, Mr. Ronald video called each one. Sean said he was on the bus back home after a long night out. George said he was heading to school for his lecture, but he could pop by to help him find his car. Chris said he had just arrived at his hotel room in Italy and had no idea what happened with the vehicle. Right away, Mr. Ronald knew who was lying. It was Chris. The clock behind him showed the exact same time as the one on his phone. He wasn't in Italy. The correct path. Luke was hiking in the mountains for 2 days when he got lost. He came across 2 paths. One leads to a nearby town, and the other one will get him lost forever. There are 2 twin girls there who know which way leads to the town. Luke can only ask them one question, but there's a catch. One of the girls always lies, and the other always tells the truth. And Luke doesn't know which one will be truthful. 25 minutes later, Luke arrived at the nearby town. What did he ask the girls? If I ask your sister for the correct path, which one would she show me? They'll both point in the same direction, which means Luke took the path they didn't point at. Where's he hiding? Jim escaped from prison on Saturday. The police had been patrolling the town he was last seen in until they got a tip. A neighbor saw him entering one of these 3 houses, but he couldn't remember which one. The police took a closer look at the houses and arrested him. How did they find out the correct house? It's the last one on the right. The car is facing the road, a common technique people on the run use to get away without losing time. Where does she live? Mia left her mother's home because they had a big argument. Her mother wanted to know where her daughter was going. But when she got back home from work on Tuesday, Mia was still missing. Mia didn't have a phone, and her mom didn't know where she went. 2 hours later, she found out where she was staying. How? She dialed the last number on the phone and told the person on the other side that they'd won the lottery. She told them they needed their name and address to give them the prize. Which is the correct door? Shane is an archaeologist who snuck into some underground caves in Egypt. When the guards spotted him, they started chasing him. He ran fast and came across, guess what? 3 doors. Behind the first one were 4 aggressive crocodiles. Behind the second was an explosive device that would go off in 5 minutes. And behind the third was a dirty pond filled with bacteria and parasites. Which door should he pick? The second door. But because the guards were coming quickly, he should move the device to the room with the crocodiles and then run away to avoid being caught. The Lost Suitcase. Jenna and Neil got back from their holidays in Hawaii. Upon returning, they discovered that their suitcase never made it into the baggage claim area. It was either lost or taken by somebody. The briefcase had a lock on it. When airport security showed up, they questioned 3 people with some convincing alibis. The steward said he checked the plane and couldn't find any luggage. The captain said the suitcase was probably forgotten in Hawaii, but nobody would open it because it was locked. The airport security guard said he just called the airport in Hawaii, and nobody knew what happened. Immediately, the police arrested the captain. Why? He knew the suitcase was locked, but nobody told him that. The break-in. Susan's apartment was broken into the day before Halloween. When she went home from work and saw the mess, she called the police. The door didn't have any signs of a break-in, just an open window. The detectives questioned 3 of her neighbors. Mrs. Ruth was knitting a pair of gloves for her great-granddaughter. Michael said he was working a 14-hour shift the day before, and he was sleeping all day. Dennis said he had broken his leg and didn't leave his home for 3 weeks. The police immediately knew who was guilty. It was Michael. He was the only one able to climb into a window. Wait a minute, you don't think Granny could do that? You should see her doing burpees.